Dune was directed by I thought it was Villanueva at first, but I think it's pronounced Villeneuve. Villeneuve? I think it's French, so it's like Villeneuve or something. And it's based on the 1965 book of the same name written by Frank Herbert. A lot of science fiction fans are gushing over this movie, and a lot of the nerd YouTubers and movie critics that I follow, they all enjoyed this movie very much. And if you're watching this review, chances are you will also be entertained by this movie. But once again, I find myself in the bottom 17% of people who did not enjoy this movie, and I'm going to explain why in a little bit. The basic storyline is that in the year 10,191, some bald white humans called the Harkonnens have been ravaging a planet called Arrakis, inhabited by a desert people called the Freemen, to mine a rare mineral called spice. And the Harkonnens decide to leave the planet and give it up to some other non-bald humans, led by Duke Leto of the House of Atreides, played by Oscar Isaac. Timothy Chalamet plays Paul, the Duke's son, and he has been trained by his mother Jessica, played by Rebecca Ferguson, in some secret society called the Bene Gesserit, that have some kind of mind control powers. It seems that the Harkonnens, however, are dealing dirty with the House of Atreides, and a bunch of antics ensue on the planet Arrakis that I really don't want to spoil any further. If you were wondering whether I remembered that plot and all the names on my own just from watching the movie, the answer is no. I had to look up every single name on sparknotes.com for this review because I could not keep up with all the sci-fi jargon that they were throwing at me in this movie. So let's start with what I liked about the movie. The movie has a few cool special effects and some cool set pieces. Denis Villeneuve is really good at giving a sense of scale and realism to the fantastical aircraft and buildings and the worlds that he creates. The most entertaining scene in the movie for me was simply watching the characters get into a dragonfly-looking aircraft that beats its wings really rapidly to fly, and it's just fascinating how Villeneuve and his special effects team can make such a simple scene of showing an aircraft take off from the ground seem very epic and exciting. The fact that he is able to make me ooh and ah at a sci-fi aircraft flying around after seeing so many sci-fi space movies is, I will admit, that's an impressive feat. I also thought the soundtrack was good, although I want to put an asterisk next to that comment and say that I like the soundtrack by itself, but I didn't like how it was employed in the movie. I think the soundtrack would be something fun to listen to while you're in the car or while you're meditating in your room, but it got very tiresome in the movie for me. Now, for what I didn't like about the movie. First, other than for Jason Momoa, there wasn't a single likable character for me in the entire movie. None of the characters have any emotional range, and they all just whisper yell throughout the entire movie. It felt like all the male actors got together and decided to do their best Jack Bauer impressions, and all the female actors got together and decided to do their best Arwen from the Lord of the Rings impressions. And man, Timothy Chalamet has one facial expression in this movie, which I can only describe as drowsy. He gives Hayden Christensen's Anakin Skywalker a run for his money for being like the least relatable and most emotionless sci-fi protagonist of all time. Rebecca Ferguson has only two jobs in this movie. Her two jobs are to look scared and to cry. Oscar Isaac has only two jobs to do in this movie. His jobs are to look stern and to tell people about how he has a duty to perform. Josh Brolin has only two jobs. His job is to look stern and to tell people how he has a duty to perform. Dave Bautista has only one job in this movie. His job is to scream at people. Zendaya has only one job to do in this movie. Stare at the camera while her hair blows in her face. These characters aren't human beings I can form a connection with or empathize with because they are all very robotic and they take themselves way too seriously. Second, while the movie had some cool special effects, it felt like 75% of this movie took place in the dark. Most of the set pieces are set at night and they star people with black hair wearing black clothes in black tunnels in black buildings, and it got very dull and boring for me to look at. There was a scene in the movie where they had a whole bunch of time spent in the darkness, and then Timothy Chalamet has a vision of Zendaya in the daytime, and when the scene pops up, they show Zendaya just standing in regular daylight. I actually jumped back slightly in my seat, and I had to squint my eyes because so much of the movie beforehand had taken place in utter darkness, and I could even see some of the guys a few seats down from me also jump back and say like, whoa, like whisper to each other when they finally showed the daylight scene. I seriously almost put my hand up to cover my eyes. Some people may say, well, yeah, that was the point, and I would say, okay, yeah, that was the point. I didn't enjoy it. Third, I could not follow any of the details of the storyline. I mean, I got the general idea that there is one race of bad guys and one race of good guys, and then there's a third race of indigenous people, and they all want to collect the spice, and there's some prophecy about the one, but I couldn't follow any of the characters' names, any of the race or ethnicity names, planet names, who betrayed who made a deal with the house of who was related to who. Like, I had to look up all the character names at the end of the movie because I couldn't understand half of what was coming out of people's mouths. Timothée Chalamet's character, for example, is named Paul, but I didn't pick that. I had to look that up online after the movie because I couldn't tell if people were calling him Poe or Pole or Paul. I was like, are they calling him Paul, or is it the British version of Paul, like Pole? I was like, is it Pole or Paul? Anyway, the dialogue in this movie is also a lot of the Imperium of the Arcadian, Carpathians Arcadian, and the Gamma Quadrant of Megorium's Wonder Emporium made a deal with the Keynesian Phoenicians, and I'm just like, man, I can't follow any of this. Half of the dialogue just went right over my head. Fourth, like I said before, I thought the soundtrack was cool in isolation, but it suffers from the Zack Snyder Justice League effect, where the music is just relentless and mind-numbing. They don't reserve the epic music for scenes where epic stuff is happening, but they will just show people walking down a dark hall casually, and they'll just be blasting this banging techno chanting music, which is just seriously, they show one scene in the movie where our characters are simply packing up their belongings to move to a new planet, and they're playing this super intense music that would normally be reserved for some kind of a battle scene, but instead it's just and I'm just thinking, dude, you're putting your belongings in a U-Haul truck. Or like, man, you're sitting down and eating dinner. This doesn't call for epic music. The soundtrack just numbed my brain, and so I felt no emotion when any of the characters were in actual danger or when they were killed off, because they played the same music that they were playing when they were just eating dinner in the movie. To sum up why I didn't like this movie, I just don't like movies where I don't care whether the characters live or die. I don't like movies where the music has to pretend that something epic is happening when I'm just staring at normal activities. I couldn't follow any of the sci-fi techno babble, and all the cool visuals were kind of dark and muted, so I just thought the movie was very boring. But I do think that a lot of fans of Dune will really enjoy seeing their favorite characters brought to life in a high-budget film. My parents also saw this movie, and they said that they were very entertained because of how unique and different the movie was. So I have no doubt that a lot of people are going to really enjoy this movie, but it's just not for me. If you think I'm an idiot, tell me why I am in the comments below, and I will see you next time.